to yet another episode of Chris Yeti's News Review. And of course, let's get right into it, folks. First up on the agenda today, our buddy Elon Musk, the richest man basically in the world. Our buddy Elon goes from company to company without pants on and says, I'm gonna buy you. There's nothing you can do about it. And by the way, you're all fired. I sure hope someday that I can get hired by Elon Musk at one of his prestigious companies and then get fired. I think this is kind of a new millennial goal for us folks at my age range. It's like, oh, let's get in there and work for a job with Elon so he can walk in and be like, nah, see you later, you're fired. It is pretty interesting that Elon Musk has taken over Twitter. I think on one hand, people really thought he was just kind of, again, trolling places like Twitter, wanted to buy them and then was wanting to back out. But in my perspective, I don't think it quite worked out the way the public viewed. I think Elon intended for this to be the way it should have been. And so really what the plan was Elon was going to walk in, say, I'm going to buy you, let them completely freak out and burn all the papers in their drawers because a new guy's coming into town. And then he said, yeah, you know what? I don't want to buy you after all. Thanks, but no thanks. And then fast forward 6 weeks later, we've confirmed that Elon has bought Twitter. So it's like on one hand, I think he tried to say he wanted them and then tried to back out for the sake of devaluing his purchase straight up. So this may not have impacted his purchase price, but it shook up the leadership in Twitter enough for him to be able to come in, make his mark, and say, see you guys later. By the way, Elon, if you ever watch this video and you need somebody to come in and take over your technology for Twitter, give me a call. I'm a no bullshit kind of guy. But the other thing that Elon has to worry about in regards to all of these employees at Twitter is something that's been really hot in the news lately, and that, my friends, quiet quitting. Yes, you've heard it. You've seen the articles, mostly from like New York Times or The Atlantic. These guys really just kind of exaggerate the bejesus out of everything. But nevertheless, they go about and say quiet quitting is where an individual no longer has the motivation or willpower to advance or move through their career any further. They simply will take their pay, quietly basically do the minimal amount of work. If that means nothing at all, then they're going to do that. Quiet quitting really isn't anything new, and just like everything else in the human sphere today, we're trying to re-describe everything. And it's getting preposterous, if you'll, bear with me on this. Quiet quitting isn't new. Employees have basically only ever done this, and that's the bare minimum. You hire somebody, basically expect them to only do the minimum. Why? That's just how really humans work. Think of the lion on the African savannah. This guy lounges about, doesn't really expend that much energy, but is ahead of an entire pack, responsible for all of these lions and responsible for more than just feeding them and the cubs, but also reproducing and so on and so forth. The social hierarchy is strong. But what does the mighty lion do when he's not hunting? Well, he lounges around. Doesn't really do much. I think if we take a bit from nature here and really understand what the lion is doing, we can take some of that, apply it to ourselves, and realize we're not that much different. We don't like to spend a tremendous amount of energy doing anything and everything, despite what you see on Instagram, where somebody builds an entire coffee end table from an old rusty pallet. These guys are talented and artistic, no doubt, but they are motivated, and motivated for very specific reasons. Typically money. But you need to make a certain amount of money to really make it worthwhile. The mighty lion simply will only attack its prey when it is an absolute necessity. The lion has been quiet quitting for years. They simply just collect their paycheck, get their dues, eat when they need to, and the rest is lying around. Lying around. There's no real solution to the employee's quiet quitting. What needs to be done, outside of Elon Musk walking into every office saying that you're fired, is simply understanding and appreciating that value from the employee. If they want to do the minimum amount of work, well, then they should get the minimal amount of pay. If they want to advance their career, there should be rewards and stipends to do more than what is expected of them. But it is kind of foolish for an employer to step in and be like, I expect you to do everything for this small salary. Oh, there you are. So I'm going to need you to have to go ahead and come in on Saturday, which is, I know tomorrow, I know you said you're going to need it off, but we're really going to need you to stretch your 40 hours into 180 hours by tomorrow. Please. Thank you, Tasha. No. That's enough. Tasha, I really don't need this kind of lip from you today, but since you're going to go ahead and do this, if you can't do it on Saturday, go ahead and come in on Sunday. No, Tasha, don't give me this again. All right, we've been over this many times. I think you and I are going to have a talk, Tasha. Why don't we go to my office? Which leads me to the next phrase, act your wage. This came out at some point around the same time as quiet quitting, and honestly sounds a bit more ridiculous than quiet quitting. Act your wage is just another fancy way of saying, that's above my pay grade. I can't tell you how many people in the workplace respond to a situation and they try to say half joking and half serious, that's above my pay grade. I don't think I'll be able to do anything there for you. What a complete BS answer. Let me tell you the definition of being a professional, folks, and that is to solve other people's problems. Whether you own a business, whether you're a middle manager, or whether you're at the bottom of the totem pole, the better you can solve other people's problems, the customer, your manager's manager's problems, the better off you're going to be. Now, you don't have to break your back and work 20-hour days just to be able to achieve this. Work smarter, not harder, folks. And if you achieve that, then you'll realize that quiet quitting and things like act your wage are really kind of an immature statement that only reflect poor decisions of employees who don't really care about the company. They don't really care about the longevity of their career. They care only about getting off work on Friday, which is fine. Everyone can do kind of what they want to do, but just don't accept that role and then turn around and be upset that you're not getting paid enough. Those are contradictory statements, and that needs to be quailed. You can quiet quit, you can act your wage, but then don't turn around and say, I'm not getting paid enough. So until the day we can all look forward to Elon Musk walking into our office space and saying, we're all fired, let's just give a little bit more effort in the workplace, because what good is it just to not give your all? That is only a reflection upon yourself, no matter how terrible your boss is. Did you guys hear about this new CPU? I saw it originally on PC Gamer, but then I saw it in some other articles. But it's effectively a new CPU that is able to transfer twice the speed of the internet's data in a second. So I think it's roughly stated that the internet transfers about a petabyte per second of the internet. Folks, I want to break this down for a moment and explain to you what a petabyte is, because it is massive. And I want to compare this to AOL days for all of the folks who grew up in my age range and beyond, who had to sit there and listen to the dial-up sounds that were far more horrifying than any movie that's coming out for Halloween this year. They're saying that this new CPU is capable of transferring 2 petabytes per second. Let that sink in for a moment here, guys. The internet, the entire internet, transfers a petabyte per second. This new CPU transfers 2 petabytes per second. We're transferring the internet 2 times over with a CPU. I don't want to hear anything else about how well Ryzen is doing these days, because with this new CPU, everything's blown out the door. I'm going to wait another 10 years before I decide to upgrade my computer. Granted, I got the i9 12th generation, which is a pretty good CPU for the workload I'm doing, but what they're talking about in this isn't just some new supercomputer. It's not some analog computer that's outperforming everything else. This is crazy, folks. Let me say it again, 2 petabytes, not 1, 2 petabytes per second. Unbelievable. All right, so we're gonna go ahead and move on to our next segment here, and that is my opinion and review of House of the Dragon. I really loved Game of Thrones when it first came out. Everybody that saw it will understand my same appreciation. We went through the first season, fell in love with all these characters, and then George R. R. Martin just kind of nuked everything and was like, ha ha, you suck. So we got left with characters that all the ones we loved died, and all the ones we hated continue living, making anyone else that we decided to love dead. And they did this for season after season, and they somehow made really compelling television out of two people in a room sitting there conversing, talking. It was really unbelievable. One of the things I don't understand when it comes to Rings of Power is how they're able to have two people in a room with close dialogue and be nowhere near that of Game of Thrones or House of Dragon. Now, I'm not talking about Game of Thrones after season 5, but everything that's 5 years of really incredible dialogue, really incredible television. And I had my doubts for House of the Dragon. When I first saw Matt Smith show up on the screen, I'm not gonna lie, I laughed. I laughed out loud. There was no way that the original, one of the older Doctor Who's, is somehow going to make his appearance in a Game of Thrones universe and convince me of it. Boy, was I wrong. I now have a new stereotype for Matt Smith, and that's a Targaryen. So, no more Doctor Who, but instead, Targaryen Who, or something like that. Matt Smith played a phenomenal role in this position, and each episode that went by left me wanting to see more. The dialogue wasn't always perfect, and each episode didn't really push the plot along, but they really captured a good, slow pacing, almost akin to that of a nice roast on a Sunday afternoon that you've put in and you're gonna let cook for a good 12 hours. It's not necessarily great until you get to the point where you're going to eat it, but once you break into that and take that first bite, you realize the entire day was worth it. And that's how I feel about House of the Dragon. 10 episodes, some of them were okay, none of them were as bad as Rings of Power in my opinion. Not everyone agrees with me, but I really thought Rings of Power was kind of way down here. House of the Dragon was way up here. And then by the time that the end of the season occurred, episode 10, I'm not going to give you spoilers out here, but I was going to work telling people this is the best television I have seen in a long time, probably since season 3 of Game of Thrones. Now, the cliffhangers didn't leave you in the same sense of dread or the same sense of really wanting to know what's going on. I like that. I don't like being left in a spot of complete being able to say, what's going to happen next? Why did they leave it there? There's so many questions. I'm so eager. That's not a good feeling, because then when you go into the next season, you leave yourself vulnerable to pick up that anticipation. And your only hope for a cure is simply saying, maybe they forgot about it, so their expectations have gone from here to here. But that's not true, folks. House of the Dragon, I can't recommend enough. Go on HBO Max, go on some streaming service, go on some non-legal streaming service and just watch it, because you're really gonna like it. Episode 4, this isn't for kids, guys. I know it wasn't really upfront. Rings of Power, you can watch with your family. Do not watch House of the Dragon with your family. Every episode is okay, but there's a couple, like episode 4, that you don't want to watch with anybody that you know. So by the time they got to season 10, they built up this entire story arc to be played out in the next season. There's a lot of questions for season 2, and unfortunately we have to wait a year, but I can't express it enough, and I had already tried to say this. Please watch House of the Dragon. Watch it all the way through. Let me know in the comments if you thought this was also the greatest television series to come out in some time. So the next thing I'm going to bring up here is a gaming segment. I like to play video games. I've been playing video games for a very long time. Pretty much my entire life is defined by video games. And one of these video games that I really appreciate is Halo. I love Halo. I grew up on the original Halo. I was going to Xbox tournaments, going to my friend's house, staying up all night on these crazy LAN parties where you would have 4 Xboxes with 4 players each, running Ethernet cables across people's houses that I've never seen or met before, where their parents were so nice to buy us all pizza and just lose our minds until 4 in the morning when everyone passes out. This was long before people decided to get drunk in my age range, so this was done completely sober. And when you can have that much fun sober playing the game, there's very few things that can trump that. Now, Halo CE, and then came Halo 2, which I remember skipping school to play its release, and I actually kind of remember a level of disappointment when Halo 2 came out. Not only with the multiplayer servers, for the first time going from like LAN only to an online co-op, that was incredible. Back where I used to live, they had only dial-up. I could not play online with Halo 2. I had to travel into town 30 minutes and bum a friend's house until he let me play. And then, of course, I just took over his house and played indefinitely. Eventually, all the complaints about Halo 2 got diminished and fell out of sight, and we just fell in love with all the problems, and it became the game itself. The scar became the person. And then Halo 3 came out. I remember distinctively, of course, everyone comparing Halo 2 to Halo 3, how much of a disappointment Halo 3 was relative to Halo 2. The internet was marred with problems trying to get online, yet again. There's no new game that can come out that's multiplayer based, and it's not gonna have connectivity issues. Almost none. You guys remember Diablo 3? What a nightmare. But that was far from the only one to experience that, but probably one of the more worst. Fallout 76. Fallout 76. So you might see where I'm going with this. Halo 2 had a problem, people loved it. Halo 3 had a problem, people loved it. Halo 4 eventually came out, nobody played it. They tried to revive it on the pro circuit, but it was only left to the dust for the campaign. Halo 5 came out. They really tried to push the multiplayer aspect of it, but you know what the problem with Halo 5 was? The problem is that it's a sequential game. It is number 5 in a series where it is said that number 6 will come out, and then number 7, and then number 8. Folks, you can't have an international competitive game where people invest their entire life to practice and get better than everybody else, only to come out with a new variation a few years later. Look at Counter-Strike Go. Look at League of Legends. Look at Dota 2. These are prime examples of games that grow with their audience and continue to harbor those who will keep a game running forever. A campaign can only be played so many times by so many people. It begins, it ends, you play it a few more times, you're done. That's it. A campaign can't continue. But when it's a multiplayer competitive game, there's one thing that can continue, and that is people's willingness to beat the pants off the other person. So whenever Halo 5 came out, I was really adamant about the idea of making a Halo game that reflects that of like Counter-Strike or League of Legends. Don't give me a League of Legends 2. Don't give me a Counter-Strike 2. I don't want that. I just want the same game updated. I know there are some sequels like Team Fortress 2, which no one ever plays anymore, but is a good example of we made a first one, wanted to perfect it a second time, but then left it at that. Look at Minecraft. Could you guys imagine for one moment if Minecraft decided to come out with Minecraft 2? What a joke that would be. And the only reason they would do it is to get more money from you. One of the biggest offenders of this is the original Halo development studio, Bungie. They came out with a game called Destiny once they left the umbrella of Microsoft. Now I never liked Destiny. I didn't like it because it focused more on PvE than it did PvP. Personally, I'm just a PvP guy. I love the excitement of competing against real human players for the most part. Don't get me started on IO games. They're all fake. But even the illusion of playing with a real player is better than that of saying, I'm playing with a random person and we're gonna go fight a bunch of AI bosses. Diablo, it kind of works out, but it doesn't really work in a Halo game, which, let's face it guys, Destiny is simply Bungie's excuse to take the theme of Halo under their own brand. And they did not do a successful job compared to Halo, which is why Microsoft is able to keep pumping that stuff out. And then Destiny 2 came out. I about lost my bananas when I found out Destiny 2 was coming out, because there was nothing in that game that really set apart from the first one. I remember the first one had so many years of development, so many expansions. It really fulfilled and developed the game. And then the second one went from here to here. It just dumped. And then they had to build it back up with more expansions, but you lose your audience when you keep coming out with the sequels. Look at Battlefield. How many Battlefields do they come out with, and the entire audience that buys Battlefield abandons the last multiplayer of Battlefield, and you're left with, you know, a shadow of what it used to be. Yeah, you can still go on Battlefield 1 and have a good time, but it's way less populated than it used to be, and it's frustrating because Battlefield's a great game, and they keep releasing these sequels that people just chase after like a white dragon. I'm gonna get you, I'm gonna get you, and then right when they catch it, the sequel comes out for that, and then they're just left like, what the fuck? People feel cheated when they have to play and purchase a sequel to a game they've invested so many hours in. And if you're a PvP player like myself, there are very few elements that you can take from one sequel to another and, you know, sell people on it. Call of Duty is by far the biggest offender of this. Tell me in the comments below if you think there has been a single Call of Duty in the past 10 years that has really made a difference online. And I'm not talking about wall running or sliding or watching fish swim in a stream. Those aren't features I'm talking about. I'm talking about maps. I'm talking about the guns and the way that they respond. I'm talking about the damage that you receive. There are so many games that introduce a gun that you can pay to win, and it just ruins it. So eventually, long story short, Halo finally releases Halo Infinite. And the purpose behind this game, at least originally, is the idea that they're going to release this game and they're going to release sub-games under this title, expansions or sequels, but it's always going to be called Halo Infinite. That's a perfect name. I swear to God, if they come out with Halo Infinite 2, I'm going to lose my mind. Now, Halo Infinite has not had its best start. There was a campaign. It was okay. Just watch it on YouTube. I don't even think they needed to come out with a campaign for this game. But nevertheless, they did. But I've only been playing multiplayer. I love competitive multiplayer specifically. I come from the MLG days, so when I go on there and I see Team Slayer Arena, I am excited. So I get in there and I just play over and over again the same games that I've always played. Yeah, they don't have the maps I love, but the mechanics are actually not that far off. There's a lot of features missing. A lot of people are complaining and upset about things like screen share missing. But folks, who cares? If you're playing screen share with somebody, you're honestly the minority. I understand where Halo got its origins from, but there are very, very few people these days that are still in the same physical environment as when Halo 1 and Halo 2 first came out. It was important to have split screen at that time, but it's not so much a big deal anymore these days. And before everyone freaks out in the comments, just understand it's gonna come. They wanted to get the feedback for it. They wanted to get these updates. Just be patient. I know the gaming community has almost negative patience, but when a developer decides to come through and actually make something worthwhile, it's upon us to revisit it and make sure it lives up to that mark. So Halo Infinite multiplayer is making headway. We've gotten a few maps, different things have happened, nothing too dramatic, but the important part is Microsoft is still focused on updating this. Guys, don't destroy Microsoft's feelings about Halo because it's not where we want it to be today. Go yell at Cyberpunk. These guys have ripped you off from day one. There was nothing in Cyberpunk. Every time I visit it with a new update, it's still the same problems. I may have one less bug than I did before, but the world of AI is the dumbest world I have ever seen. And yet I continue to see reviews appraising their updates. How can you go from garbage to less garbage and people praise that? That's the world we live in, guys. So Cyberpunk's getting praised for being less trashy, while Halo is getting trashed on for being less than stellar. But if you're a true competitive player like I have been, you'll realize the core details are there in Halo. And this is important. So my prediction, and I know everyone's going to lose their mind, but over the next year, Halo Infinite multiplayer is going to trump that of any Halo that has ever come out. And I think we need to support this. Otherwise, we're going to have to support a re-released game every 3 years that we have to spend $60, $70 on just to take to the internet and get all pissed off about. So please, give Halo a chance. Love it like I love it. Even though I'm the minority on the internet, it's going to be great. Trust me. All right, now we've made our way to the sports segment of today's video. Guys, and I love talking about the Los Angeles Lakers. They have finally won a game of the season. What are they, 1-5? And they're celebrating like this? Take a look at this video. They're celebrating like they just won the NBA championship for this one game out of 6 games they played this season. Don't get me wrong, it's good to give your team motivation, to give them positive energy, but then you have Westbrook on your team who just sucks it all right out. I can't get over this clip where he's shooting a jump shot and AD and LeBron are about to throw a fit on the court. It's like, what is going on? Last video I talked about LeBron and how he just doesn't want to walk back on his decision to have Westbrook, or maybe he thinks there's some kind of Space Jam formula waiting for Westbrook to break out of his shell. Who knows? But it's clear that LeBron is frustrated when Westbrook doesn't play his role. When he does anything outside of the specific play he is told to do, you can tell every time LeBron is frustrated. And AD tries to follow in suit with that because he doesn't want to be seen as the next Westbrook, which isn't really possible. AD is a phenomenal player. And he's shown in a few of these games this season, he can still hold up to the best, if not be the best. But he's not consistent. And unfortunately, that kind of puts him slightly above Westbrook. His lack of consistency doesn't make him any better off. And that is really sad. This guy was somebody that we followed many years ago, had many hopes for. And then when he joined the LA Lakers and then helped them win a championship, even though it was a bubble championship, still a championship. They beat Jimmy Butler, and that was incredible. It's anyone's guess what's going to happen to Westbrook. They may decide to trade him later in the year, but clearly LeBron has most of the reins for the Lakers. We'll just have to see what happens, but I still got my eggs in the basket for my boy Luka. This guy is an incredible player, and he's young enough that he's still going to keep improving his skill set. If he doesn't win this year, this guy is going to win a lot sooner than Dirk did. All right, folks, well, that is it for another episode of Chris Yeti's News Review. Until next time, cheers and good night.